Okay, great. Okay, we're on chapter 24, the urinary system. First page, definitely read. Second page, definitely read. That one says kidneys, location. It has a couple of diagrams. The diagrams are not difficult. They should be looked at. You don't have to do anything further with them, but they should be looked at. Okay. On the next page, come on, book. Okay.
Charlie,
Yes.
um, so we outline kidneys, gross anatomy of kidneys, location, and external anatomy, internal gross anatomy.
Well, I'm going through it, but my book, I've only covered the first 2 pages, and that was gross anatomy of the kidneys, location, and external
Okay.
anatomy. Okay, now I'm flipping the page. Your book is going to be pretty similar. Uh, Internal gross anatomy, yes. Okay. Now here, if I don't mention the diagram is for your benefit to take a look at. Okay. Uh, if I want you to know the diagram, it's going to be in our next lecture, okay, which is going to be next Tuesday. Okay, on the kidney. Okay, after internal gross anatomy, keep reading till you get to a clinical application. We don't need that. We don't need vasculature and nerve supply. So I'm down to, I don't know if your book has it, a check your understanding, and I haven't done any further reading. Microscopic anatomy, no. Mechanism of urine production, yes. Now we start reading again. Nephron structure, that should get 3 or 4 stars. Lots of questions will come out of that. Okay. And nephron structure continues to the next page, which is a diagram. The next page after that, diagram. But on my next page, it says renal tubule underneath one of the diagrams. And that should be red. See if you can spot a paragraph with bold print starting with the words renal tubule. And then the next page. This one has a numerical outline starting with number 1, the proximal convoluted tubule, then the nephron loop, distal convoluted tubule, and number 4, the collecting ducts. These are all very important. The diagram at the top of the page, diagram 24.8, is very important. Classes of nephrons. It's after number 4. Short thing, yes. Yes. But when I turn the page, I have blood vessels associated with nephrons. No. Okay. What I want you to learn there, I'll teach you in lecture. Okay. Continue on to check your understanding without outlining, and then pick up the outlining on ureters, gross anatomy, skip microscopic anatomy. So you haven't got much on ureters. Urinary bladder, start outlining. Gross anatomy, yes. And stop down at microscopic anatomy. We're not skipping microscopic anatomy, except for now. We'll be right back to it. The urethra. Turn your page till you find urethra. Please read that. Micturition, yes. And finally, you come to a clinical application, check your understanding, and disorders of the urinary system. Stop there. You can stop above clinical application. A lot of the information on disorders is interesting, but it's not anatomy. Okay, put that aside. Okay, I've moved over to week 6. Okay, you do have a discussion question. Okay, in the discussion question, I want to, I know I'm going to lead you into a wrong answer. That's fine. We'll talk about it later. I want you to talk about or give me your feeling about the suitability of online classes in preparation uh, for the nursing classes, in preparation for the 3 prerequisite classes. Do you think online preparation will get you there? Okay. And so you do have a discussion. You have an assignment. The assignment is the one I just read to you, chapter 24. Okay. This is going to be our lecture right now to finish up the digestive system. Later on today, here's the bonus quiz. It's not activated yet. Okay. And I'll send you there to take that. Everybody should take it. It can't hurt your grade. All it can do is help. So we're going to go to the cross section of the GI tract. You recall we were talking about the digestive system. We named the parts, and now I want to take a cross section. Where do I take the cross section? In the esophagus, I could. The stomach, could. But I think the small intestine is the most representative. Okay. I changed that, so I don't know why I didn't change the date. Sorry about that. I changed that last night, but I must have missed one of the save buttons. Same thing, cross section of the GI tract, and that bugs the hell out of me. You know I will change it. Okay. Along the length of the GI tract, the tract itself is like a hose, and it has many layers around it. 4 in particular that we will talk about. The first layer is on the inside. This is the lumen. Lumen is the conducting portion, the pathway, the channel. Sometimes it's filled with air when we're talking about the respiratory system, and digested food when we're talking about the digestive system. It's also filled with blood when we're talking about the circulatory system. It's always the lumen. Okay. The first layer, right here, the one with all the gear-like projections inward. This is the tunica mucosa. Tunica means layer or coat, and mucosa means lining. This layer is subdivided into three parts. We have other layers out here to yet talk about. And fortunately, they are not subdivided into three parts. So the tunica mucosa probably needs the most attention. These invaginations, infoldings, I called them cogs a moment ago, cogs of gears. These things stick in to the lumen. They're called villi, V-I-L-L-I. It'll be written for you in a second. And the villi absorb nutrients. They greatly increase the surface area of the wall of the lumen. They have on their very outside an epithelial layer. They have to. An epithelial layer covers or lines, and here is lining the lumen. These are to represent the cogs. Okay, they're not folds. They're more like projections. They're more like bristles on a brush, and they're covered with cells, which are shown here. This entire structure is a villus. This is, and this is as well. The outer layer of cells, which is an epithelial layer, outer layer cells of the villus, is an epithelial layer, and these cells are called microvilli. Microvilli are on the villus. This model is to show you the tunica mucosa, which includes the villus here and here and here, and the microvilli that are on them. This villus over here is showing you a network of capillaries, small venules, small arterioles. These are what absorb the nutrients from the lumen of the small intestine. This network of capillaries is called the lamina propria. Lamina propria. I'll have that defined for you in print, just above or below here. On the other villus over here, which was cut at a different spot, there's a larger collecting tubule inside called a lacteal. The lacteal absorbs that emulsified fat that we talked about last time, takes it out of the small intestine, and the fat enters into the lacteal. There are three layers inside of the tunica mucosa. One of those layers is the epithelial layer, which we call the microvillus. The second layer is the lamina propria. The third layer is down here. It's a layer of smooth muscle. It runs circularly around the GI tract. It's called the muscularis mucosa. Its function in pulsating and contracting all of the time is to add a little bit of push to the blood that's in the lamina propria to get it to move and eventually reach the liver. Okay, 3 layers: microvilli, lamina propria, muscularis mucosa. Now, as I said, these are like little fingers sticking into the lumen. Here's a picture of that. If you picture yourself as a spacecraft or something here, you come around and you're going down this tunnel. These are the villi. An amazing shot. Okay. Now, in print, the second substructure of the tunica muscularis is the lamina propria. It's a set of capillaries, absorbs nutrients, and all of the material that is gathered in, all the absorbed nutrients, make their way to the liver by the hepatic portal vein, sometimes just called the portal vein. Okay. We'll be getting to that a little bit later. The lacteal takes up emulsified lipids. Now the other layers, okay, we have the tunica submucosa, tunica muscularis, and tunica serosa. Let me back up to the original drawing. This one here was the tunica mucosa. Here's the tunica submucosa. This is a layer primarily of connective tissue and fat, which is connective tissue, to hold everything together. The next layer is actually divided into 2 parts: circular smooth muscle, which squeezes and moves the contents of the small intestine forward, and longitudinal smooth muscle right outside. They show it in a different color and a different posture of the muscle fibers. They shorten the GI tract. The shortening effect of the outer layer and the crimping effect of the inner layer really helps to move the contents forward. The outer layer is longitudinal muscle coming out towards you. The inner layer is circular muscle. But both of them together make up one layer called the tunica muscularis. It's kind of hard sometimes to keep it straight. The outer layer is longitudinal muscle. The inner layer is circular muscle. I always say to myself, I wish I had a funny expression, but I don't, but this one works. You wait a long time on the outside before you get to the inner circle. You can use it if you want, avoid it if you are lucky. Okay, here are the 4 layers then, one last time. Tunica mucosa, tunica submucosa, tunica muscularis, and the 4th one is a small, thin, but tough covering around the entire GI tract. It's called the tunica serosa. In a high school class, for some reason, they call it the adventitia. Tunica serosa. Tunica serosa not only coats or covers, but it also interconnects parts of the small intestine. You'll see that in the picture coming up. We have reached a part called the serous membranes here. These are usually broad, fairly expansive coverings over the body cavities and the internal organs. They secrete fluids to help lubricate things, and there are plenty of these, but the 6 major serous membranes I have listed here. Okay, number 1 is the parietal peritoneum. It completely covers the wall of the abdominal pelvic cavity. Everything in the abdominal cavity is covered by the parietal peritoneum. I've rested the arrow on it at this point. If you were to take out every viscera or organ out of some animal, okay, and leave just the body cavity, and you touch the body cavity, the back, the side, the front, that is parietal peritoneum. You'll have also removed some from the inside as well, but left on the outside, that's parietal peritoneum. Visceral peritoneum covers the organs. Parietal peritoneum covers the body wall. Visceral peritoneum extends from the parietal and covers the organs. They're showing that down here, visceral peritoneum. Here's the organ being covered. Parietal pleura. Tear your lungs, mentally anyway, tear your lungs out and feel the cavity where the lungs were present. The body wall, okay, is the parietal pleura. Covers the wall of the thoracic cavity. The visceral pleura, these are membranes that cover the lungs. Visceral meaning organ. Visceral meaning organ. So the lungs are covered by the visceral pleura. The parietal pericardium. If you could reach in and grab somebody's heart, it would be covered with a fairly loose, tough but thin membrane. and that main membrane would be movable. That's the parietal pericardium, the outer protective covering of the heart. But the visceral pericardium lies under that and is directly on the heart, not movable, not removable. Okay. Pericardial space lies between these two membranes. Let me go down and see how you could look at these diagrams and understand it, I hope, better. Okay. The red, okay, surrounds the thoracic cavity on two sides. This is the parietal pleura. The visceral pleura is, I think, blue here.
That's
And in between the visceral and parietal pleura is the pleural space. It's not much. Books and notes tend to have it shrunken, but your lungs pretty well fill your thoracic cavity. For the heart, you have an outermost membrane. This is the parietal pericardium. And directly attached to the heart is the visceral pericardium. It's also known as the epicardium. The pericardial space or sac is the area between the two. Some additional ones. One is the additional membrane, the falciform ligament. This is the liver, and you're standing up most of the day while you're awake anyway. And that liver doesn't fall to your feet. That liver is held up to the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm here. And here's the ligament that holds it up, the falciform ligament. The falciform ligament is a serous membrane. It's a smaller, one than some, but it's still considered a serous membrane. The mesenteries proper. Now, this takes advantage of the peritoneum. These are the small intestines here. You can see them over here. When we spread the small intestine apart, we've got this, stained glass looking membrane through which the blood vessels are going to traverse. This is the mesenteries proper. Over the parts of the small intestine, there's a membrane too. You can't see it here, but that would be the visceral peritoneum. And the parietal peritoneum would be on the body wall, and that doesn't show in this diagram at all. For the large intestine, it's held together and it's held to the body by the mesocolon as a colon. Here's the mesocolon at the transverse portion of the large intestine. Where's it going? To the back body wall. The back body wall holds on to almost everything. We have an ascending portion and a descending portion. We're just going to call them mesocolon. Mesocolon holds the colon, and mesenteries proper holds the small intestine. This must have been written in a foreign language because gaster means stomach. It's some language anyway. We recognize what it is. Attached to the lower portion of the stomach, attached to the greater curvature, is the greater omentum. This is the greater omentum here. This is a fatty apron. It's also called that, fatty apron. It stores energy. It insulates. If you were going to hibernate, not that we do, this is very, very important. We have another area on the lesser curvature that's filled with the lesser omentum. This helps draw the stomach towards the back body wall. Terms that I don't highlight or mention in the body of the text, in this one drawing anyway, are not important. This is an ovary right here, an egg to be released here into the infundibulum, unmarked, unlabeled, you'll get it later, and then go through the oviduct or fallopian tubule. If it's fertilized, it'll implant in the uterus. What holds all of this together and in place? What holds the fallopian tubule in place and the ovary? It's the broad ligament. The body wall is right here. This is the broad ligament. Well, we're making damn good time today. So let's go on if you don't mind, right to lab terms. You should have gotten an email from me this weekend telling you that the bonus quiz was not going to include the forearm muscles. Okay, just the arm muscles. The forearm muscles are a bitch. They are difficult to tell from just one diagram. You need a couple of diagrams or a good model in front of you. So I'm going to try to help you out on those too. So what I'm going to do is do the arm muscles, and I'll do the forearm muscles. Then I want to talk to you about this list of terms. Okay. And then I'll send you to the bonus quiz that you can take after a break. Arm muscles. Okay, the deltoid really doesn't give anybody any trouble. Anytime you get a shot in the arm, that's where you get it. Okay. The deltoid muscle is actually divided into three parts. You will not be responsible for the three parts, just the deltoid itself. If you use this page, want to, you can print it out and make flashcards. Because it does give the action, which is very important, the insertion and the origin.
Charlie, I had a quick question.
Sure.
I noticed on your lab flashcard pages for last week that the origin, insertion, and action were a lot more detailed than on the website. Which would you prefer us to know, the more detailed version or the less detailed?
Well, I'd prefer you to know the more details, but it's acceptable for any of the exams to know the less detailed.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so you know, a lot of the stuff that you learn and I learn, we forget, and so I don't want to overkill here necessarily. I want to at least get the gist of everything. And so if you could take either one of those, because all the questions that I'm going to put together, or actually I have put together, they be answered by either type of study. Okay, here's the biceps. The biceps brachii. When it says biceps, that means two heads. Where are the two heads? They're lost up in here. Okay, one here and one on the other side. They're both going to the scapula, however. Now, while you look at the muscle, this is the time to look at the origin, coracoid process. Remember that? Okay. And the supraglenoid tubercle. Oh, you never had that one. But that would be so quick to look up. It's just the upper portion of the glenoid fossa. The radial tuberosity is the insertion. And so I'm acting as though you can see me, but you can't. If you can look at the action, it flexes the forearm. Well, how does that happen? You've got your origin up at the shoulder blade, okay, and your insertion is radial tuberosity. Raise your radial tuberosity towards the scapula, and you will be flexing the forearm, decreasing the angle. Actually do these motions on yourself, okay? Here it is on the cadaver. The brachialis, backing up, is right beside the biceps brachii. Biceps is here, the brachialis is here. So now we look over here. Here's the deltoid. We have to take a second out to get our orientation. Here's the deltoid, okay, and it helps me, says, well, the one coming straight down is the, actually straight down is over here. This is the biceps. This is the brachialis. And this one and this one here are two of the heads of the triceps. The third triceps head is in this groove between the other two. So if you can find the triceps, that's the way I like to do it, find the triceps, come in front, put your probe or your mind down and cut it. This next muscle is the brachialis. And here's a good shot of the brachialis here. Here it is here. This one looks like a fooler, but hey, just what I said. Triceps, triceps. Find the two triceps. Next muscle, brachialis. You can't see the biceps on this one. I think it hasn't it's not in place actually, but you can see it nicely over here. Triceps, triceps, brachialis, biceps. The triceps brachii, they're using the same, or I used the same picture to show it. Here it is back here. Triceps, brachialis, biceps, brachii, and the deltoid. Somebody's got a cute little arrangement here for remembering things. But I was going to say in my classroom, you couldn't come to the test with that uh, written on yourself. But at home, what can I do? I've seen people come to class with ink on, almost tattoos of all the muscles on themselves. Okay, I'm just taking a quick look to see which way the author did this, because I didn't. I took these pictures, but I didn't put this part together. Okay, flexor carpi ulnaris. A flexor muscle does just that. It flexes. So if you hold your hand out in front of you with your palm up this time, okay, and you draw your fingers into a fist, you're flexing. If you take your whole hand and raise it up towards your head, okay, you can't go too far, you're flexing. You're flexing. So we're at a muscle here that's the flexor carpi ulnaris. Ulnaris means the ulnar side. Okay, the radial side, the thumb side is always the radial side. Get that ingrained. Thumb is always radial. So the little finger is the ulnar side. So now we're looking at this muscle here, ulnar side. Flexor carpi. The word carpi refers to carpals, the 8 carpals in each hand. In other words, here in the wrist. This extends to the carpals. Okay. So it's flexor. It's going to cause the hand to come towards us here in this picture. Carpi, because it's attached to a carpal. Ulnaris, because it's on the little finger side. Flexor carpi ulnaris. Giving you the basics of it here. Here's the thumb again. Here's the little finger. And here, again, down here is the flexor carpi ulnaris. Looks like there are 2 parts. 1, 2. All carpi muscles, and there's going to be 4 of them. All of the carpi muscles have 2 heads. None of the others have but 1. Okay, so now we move to the next muscle here. This was flexor carpi ulnaris. The next muscle is the palmaris longus. Trace it out, and it goes and fans out to everything. Here it is, goes up here. This is the palmaris longus. If you had a specimen, a cat, for instance, in front of you, and we are going to be doing the cat muscles too, but that'll be easier for you. Once you find the palmaris longus, you've got it made, palmaris longus. Because on either side of the palmaris longus is either the flexor carpi ulnaris that we did, or on the other side, it's going to be the extensor. I'm sorry, the flexor carpi radialis going to the thumb. These are all flexor muscles. Flexor carpi radialis. I'm sure there's a card coming for that. I'm just going ahead a little bit. There's a small muscle that curves over. This is the pronator teres. It turns your palm down, turns your whole arm downward. Palm pronator teres. Okay, so the next one is the flexor carpi radialis, as I said. Flexor side to the carpi and the radial side, flexor carpi radialis. Here's the pronator teres. Now, as far as the origins and insertions and actions, I know I was just sort of asked this. You're welcome to give me the ones on the abbreviated list that I provided you. Here's the brachioradialis. Now, we're looking at the top of the hand. We're looking at the extensor side, not the flexor side. And the first two muscles right here and here are really one divided in two. It's the brachioradialis. Okay, I don't like, I'm going to probably change this. Yeah. That's okay. This is the extensor carpi ulnaris. Ulnaris because we're on the little finger side, going to a carpal, and here's the muscle itself. It's going to cause the fingers to be extended. Extensor carpi ulnaris. Then coming up one to a smaller muscle, really isn't that small when you free it. This is the extensor digitorum minimi. It only goes to the little finger. It extends the little finger. We have a whole muscle for that. The one up above it is going to be the extensor digitorum, sometimes called the extensor digitorum communis, because see how it goes to all the digits except the little finger. Here's the extensor digitorum communis labeled. And now this is better. Okay. Here are the two muscles, here and here. Before you get to the forearm extensors, this is the extensor carpi radialis, going to the thumb side. There are two parts to it. It looks like these two parts belong to this one. It does not. Okay. This and this are the extensor carpi radialis. So if this is the extensor carpi radialis, this is the extensor digitorum. This is the extensor digitorum minimi. And this is the extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay. This is the pollicis longus going out to the thumb. It's often called the hitchhiker's muscle. I am not going to ask you about this one. I'm not going to ask you it at all. Okay. So don't be surprised if later on tonight this picture disappears from the screen. Okay. It's not that important. Okay. The only way you can learn the muscles is see them again and again. We have plenty of time to do that. If you feel like you're going to be lost from here on out, that's not true. You do just fine if you try to keep up and take a look whenever something is shown you. You'll be fine. I just won't let a test question appear that hasn't been adequately shown. So if you have questions about anything, of course, you can ask me. Okay, now let me show you this list of terms for lecture test one. I put it in there last night. I put it in there because that gives you time to look at it if you want to, but I didn't want to give it to you too early because everybody's attention would go to that instead of what they're supposed to be studying. Okay, so here we have a list of terms. All of these were used in the first lectures. All of these were used in the material that's posted under lecture material that I've asked you to reread or study for. Okay. Keeps going. It looks like now all of a sudden it looks like a lot, but you should be familiar with each of these terms. There's going to be a couple, of course, that you're not, and you'll have to look them up individually. But I think most of them, you don't need to write a definition out or try to do anything like that or type a definition to waste your time. You just have to think, do I have an idea? Do I have an appreciation of what that is? Do I know what flexion is, for instance? Do I know what active transport is, for instance? Do I know what the word diploid means? Okay. These are the terms. This goes through the sliding filament theory because that's the last lecture, the one about myofibrils. That's included on the test. Any question about these? Hopefully, you're familiar with most of them, and hopefully you don't spend all of your time studying just these between now and the test. These are words that were used and usually in bold-faced type in our lecture material. And these are words that I use freely in the exam. Okay, questions? Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to do it, but ask you if you can hear me when you're so quiet. Okay, if you don't have any tests, any exams, any questions, okay, then
I do have a quick question
yes,
about the tunica mucosa.
yes.
How is that different than like the lining of the stomach on the inside? You know how it's all bumpy and rigid? What is that portion of the stomach in comparison?
That portion of the stomach is still called the tunica mucosa because it's the lining layer, okay? However, only the small intestine, I should have said this before, only the small intestine has villi, okay, for so much absorption. You don't have that in the stomach. You have a relatively flat surface when you look at it under the microscope. But of course, it's really bumpy because it's hill and dale sort of thing, where you have quite a bunch of folds called rugae. But the rugae don't have the absorptive power. The rugae are there to move the contents along in the stomach. The villi are there to absorb material in the small intestine.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, on the bonus quiz, okay, some people might want to take a quick look at it. Quick look. I may want to take a quick refresher on their notes or something like that. It usually doesn't do any good. But this is a simple quiz. This is only 10 muscles, and you name them and submit your quiz. You're only going to get 10 minutes. Don't worry. That's enough if you know it. And then if you are still working at 10 minutes, the quiz will just be taken from you and automatically submitted. Okay. You should be able to check your own score, divide by 2. So if you get 10 right, you get 5 points. If you get 8 right, you get 4 points. If you get 7 right, you only get 3 points because there's no 3.5. Okay. And I'd like to start that test, not right now, okay, at 3:30. so I can give you a break. Some people have probably a need for a break right now. I'll have the test open up at 3:30.
Is it gonna be multiple choice or
Yeah,
like fill in
yes,
the blank?
just multiple choice. It's going to be easy, I hope. Okay. Okay, well, if that's the case, I'm going to end this session. And you at 3:30, I'll have it open at 3:30, probably for half an hour. So if somebody else has to start late, that's okay. Come back and take the test. You can start the test at 3:30. Okay, and then that's it. That's it. I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Charlie.
Thank you.
Okay, see you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Bye.